I am, again, Tricia Fraser, and Implementation Manager in Parish Financial Services. Also lead a group of wonderful consultants who are assigned and dedicated to our collaboratives, one of which, Patrick Farragher, who is over getting some coffee right now. He is also a consultant assigned to the collaboratives as well. I love, or very excited to see the first word, when I look at the role of the finance councils, the first word I see is evangelization. And we may not think of ourselves in financial management as evangelizers, but we are. By virtue of our baptism, we're all called to go forth and make disciples. And so even if our gifts are in financial management, we're going to be using those for the purposes of the new evangelization within these collaborative environments. So we will be forming parishioners into disciples. We're going to be doing outreach to non-parishioners as well. And we're going to be doing that by being the best stewards of the resources of those collaboratives. So currently, in your role in the Finance Council, one of the things that you would do every year is called the annual report to parishioners. This is a report that gives every parish an opportunity to tell their story. What happened over the past year at our parish? You look at the operations versus the budget, and that was the budget that you set out, the plan for yourselves. Did you meet that budget? Tell the story. Be transparent. Tell about the successes of the past year, and tell about the needs of those collaboratives. It's a great opportunity for the parishes to tell about what is going on at their parish, and to the parishioners to understand what the financial resources are. So you're looking at your budget to actual, you're looking at your balance sheet that shows all the resources of that parish. And then you've got your budget. So the Finance Council is very involved in forming the budget of the parishes. And I like to put an asterisk next to that and say budget for mission. Because it's very important that we move from that maintenance mode of budgeting, which is, you know, how much money do I have today to spend, to looking at a more mission-based focus to say, do I have sustainable resources to further the mission of this parish? And that sustainable resources is always what we're looking to do when we build those strong, stable centers of the new evangelization that Sister Pat talked about. And the budget is the great way to get there. That's your roadmap. If you don't have a roadmap, how are you going to get to where you want to go? So the budget is a very, very effective tool to get there, and the Finance Council is very operative in getting those budgets made in the parishes. And reviewing those financials on a minimum of a quarterly basis, but it would be great if you could meet monthly to do that as well, but minimum quarterly, because you want to make sure that if you're not meeting those budget commitments that you set out to do, you have time to do course corrections. So if you're not meeting regularly, you're not going to have that opportunity to make those course corrections along the way. And so you're going to, again, be looking at your balance sheet and your profit and loss against your budget and against last year as well, to see how are we doing and what's happening that's different from what we expected. Internal controls. The Finance Council should always be looking at internal controls, because that goes hand in hand with loss prevention. And loss prevention, it's obviously something that we should all be concerned with maintaining and securing the resources of the parish. Because when there is a theft of any kind, it not only is a loss of funds and money, but it's a loss of trust between the parishioners and the parish. So it transcends just the monetary loss there. So the Finance Council should always be reviewing those security internal control measures that are in place for money coming in, depositing, reporting, auditing of those funds. How is all that, how is that tracking down? And we have best practices that we share with the parishes on all of that. And if the Finance Council can be reviewing that on a regular basis, that will be very, very helpful to securing those funds. Fundraising. This is something that should always be on the docket in a Finance Council meeting. Development program. It's not just a one-time static thing. It should always be in the forefront of what you're doing. A stewardship committee. something like that, so that you're always looking at ways that you can enhance the collections that are coming into your parishes. Increased offertory programs, enhanced grand annual, electronic giving, all of those things, capital campaigns, always all those things should be on the table so where you're discussing what's best for your parish. Even things like auctions, fundraisers of any kind, anything that brings the community together. And then of course, together with that is managing your debt. And debt shouldn't always be a negative thing, even though it's a liability and an obligation of the parish. Sometimes debt provides the funds today that you will pay back tomorrow so that you can get resources, you can get some capital improvements, you can get some ministries paid for today that you can actually have today and use today and pay for over time. Where debt becomes a negative is if you engage in debt that the parish can't afford. And that's where the Finance Council can be very, very helpful in determining that before you go into too much debt. So collaborative impact on your role. There'll be many new ministries, hopefully, coming involved as you're part of a collaborative. The role of the Finance Council will be to oversee that and make sure that those different ministries are going to further the new evangelization first and foremost, and also not hinder any of the tax-exempt status of your parishes. That's very important, as the government is always looking at that as well. Property management. Deb Dillon's going to follow me, and she's going to talk in depth about this, more in depth about this, but the role of the Finance Council gets involved very much in property management. Construction, leases, sales, use of property, especially in the collaborative. Vital decisions are being made as we speak in terms of where are we going to have certain things? Where are the priests going to live? Where's religious ed going to be? Where's the staff going to stay? All of that, the Finance Council will be very involved in those decisions. You'll also assist and develop the pastoral plan that Sister Pat talked about. You'll have input in that as well, as you're the stewards of the resources. And here's an important change to what you're currently doing now in your parishes, is you're going to oversee the allocation of the program, shared program costs. That's a new word for the collaboratives because a lot of you have not had shared programs before. So the Finance Councils are going to be the ones who are going to determine the allocations between the parishes. So for instance, if you have a shared religious ed program, you may or may not decide to allocate that amongst the parishes on number of religious ed students by parish, something like that. So the common staff will be shared. What's a way you may want to allocate that? And we have some recommendations for you, but ultimately it'll be the Finance Councils that will make that recommendation in terms of how they're going to share those allocations. And we think that at one point you'll do that once a year so that you're not looking at that, and changing them throughout the year so often. Kind of review that once a year, look at those allocations so as those expenses and income comes in, that the business manager or finance person can just do those allocations out, and the Finance Council is just reviewing those on a monthly basis. And then review those allocations a year from now and say, did they make sense? Do we need to change those? Was that a fair and equitable allocation out? So I think that's going to be a very, very important role. I also have been recommended that make sure those allocations get put down in the minutes, because sometimes people forget that who decided on what. And out of fairness, that should all be on the record. And then also the last point there is financial management of the cash flow. And that's there because more than likely, one parish will have the lion's share of paying for some of these costs. For instance, let's take payroll. You may run that through one parish who's now taking on all of the burden of paying that. And then they're going to be billing out the other parishes in the collaborative. So what you want to make sure is that the other parishes are reimbursing that one parish in a timely manner, because one parish should not be taking on the debt of another. So you will be making sure as Finance Council that those parishes are being reimbursed in a timely fashion. So defining the changes, it's a mindset change for us. We're now looking at everything through the lens of the new evangelization. Every decision that we make will be based on how does this relate to the new evangelization. As we look at our budgets, as we look at any cost that we're adding or taking away, how is this going to now impact the new evangelization? And now you're not just looking at for the good of your own parish, you're going to be looking at it through the lens of the good of the collaborative. We want all parishes and the collaboratives to be stronger. We're not going to, have this differing, one parish bringing another one down. We want you all to rise to a stronger operational vitality. So you're going to have budget items that are now collaborative style budget items rather than just parish specific, and we will budget them on each individual parish budget according to those allocations that we talked about earlier. And I think Denise alluded to this as well. We want to ensure collaboration, that's the operative word tonight, between all of the councils. So you as a finance council should be working in collaboration with the pastoral council, with the school boards as well. I have one more slide here, and this was from the finance office, and we have Anne-Marie Keneally with us tonight. Anne-Marie, if you could just wave your hand. She's from the finance office in their internal audit department. So they have included some points here from their audits. As they go out and audit all the parishes, they wanted to make everyone aware of a few points as well. The Finance Council meeting at a minimum quarterly. We've talked about that, and taking minutes. And I think, as I said, some of these decisions are very different from what you're used to making, and having them in the minutes so people can refer to them and refresh their memory is going to be very important as well. Reviewing internal audit reports, and so that's right up Anne-Marie's alley. Every parish has an internal audit report from their past audit. The Finance Council should know what those audit findings are, and they should be reviewing the follow-up on those findings. Did the parish actually, fulfill the requirements of what we said we would do? And then we're on our next round of audits right now. I know all of our collaboratives are being audited again, if not presently, in the near future. And segregation of duties. If there aren't enough staff members to do everything the auditors say, oh my goodness, you got to have separate people doing all these, have a finance council member step in, review a bank rec now and then, and do some of the things that another staff member would be doing. But the finance council members are great people to fill in for those segregation of duties as well. Ensure strong offertory controls. Again, being good stewards of the resources. We have many best practices on just this. If you're concerned at all about the offertory procedures, please reach out to any of us. We can certainly pass those along to you, but the Finance Council should always be reviewing those procedures. And monitor investment decisions at the parish. And this goes to, the cash that you have. How much are you holding locally in a non-interest bearing checking account at the parish? Don't let a lot of money be sitting there. We have interest bearing savings at the Archdiocese. Put money in there. Keep, maybe 3 months local at 3 months operating at your local level, and then send it in so it's interest bearing. And then if it's long-term savings, put it into the common investment fund. That's what the Finance Council should always be reviewing to maximize the investment income on your resources. So I'm going to open it up to questions on anything that either Denise or myself has presented, if anyone has any.
So is there a statement of operating procedures or any kind of guidelines for the Finance Council to look at for internal control, so we can have like a checklist of what we should be looking at?
Yes, there are guidelines right now in what's called our Parish Administration Manual, so we could absolutely provide those to you.
They are on our website.
Good.
Under offices and services. do you just do a search on it and you're able to find them?
I do that.
Yes, on Boston Catholic Fireworks.
We'll be sure that that gets onto all the materials from tonight, we'll also put on disciplesinmission.com so that everything that you need is all in one place. I also want to point out that with those operating procedures, they're in general written from the perspective of single parishes. We're going to have to rewrite those, but we don't want to rewrite them now guessing what your experience is going to be. They'll be rewritten based on the experience of the Phase 1 collaboratives. So you'll be assisting us in trying to come up with the best ways of doing this in a collaborative setting. We don't have everything now done in collaborative, so we don't know how exactly it's going to work for you. That's going to be your experience. Welcome to Phase 1.
Thank you. Any other, oh, go ahead.
Just a more comment on the question. Having heard what you said about collaboratives, I'm sure glad that I'm a member of one of the few, not the only standalone parish. So glad. Frankly, I found that sufficiently confused.
That's a great collaborative because you do have the second worship site. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Deb Dillon.